Hello, everyone. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. I apologize for those of you who are really into the Super Bowl uh, that I scheduled a live stream today, or that I didn't do it earlier. Anyway, uh, if you don't, we should be done by the time the game comes on. Yeah, so um, hopefully you can forego your party for now and, check this out. I think the trial transcript itself is only about 45 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken. So we're still talking about accuser Rosetta Grate. Rosetta Grate, during her second, what was it, jail interview, she called the detectives and asked them to come back a few days after her first interview and asked them or told them all these things that in her room where she claims Daniel was that should have DNA evidence on them. And that was mostly, from what she was talking about, had to do with possibly saliva, but definitely semen. And she guaranteed the detectives that these particular items were going to have DNA evidence from Daniel Holtzclaw on them. So we're going to listen to the former now crime lab analyst ELAINE Taylor is going to testify about the quote unquote evidence in DNA evidence in the Rosetta Grate case. So before we get started, I want to say hello and welcome to my big sister, Cherie. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Well, I started on time for the time I scheduled, but there should be no hiccups today. I have the video preloaded. It should play easily without me having to search for it or anything. So yes, we're later than 1 or 1:30, but I don't expect any hiccups. So hopefully that's encouraging to everyone. So let's see. Say hello really quick to everybody in the chat. Little Barb, hey, thank you for being here again. I'm so excited to see you every time you're able to join us in the chat. Thank you so much. And the RP Games, welcome and good afternoon. I'm really happy to see you. You, as you can see, were gifted a membership last week. So I have been bad about membership rewards or whatever they're called. But I did, for the first time, put out a 15 or so minute video from Detective Michael McBride.
Yeah.
So I don't know if those of you who were members, if you got to see it when it was released. I think it was for about 24 hours because I've never done this. I don't know how to do it. So I put it out for 24 hours, and I think now it should be public. So this just goes right along with the Rosetta Grate case, in that this was the officer who collected photos and things like that at the crime scene. I use my air quotes a lot. Sorry, you guys can't see it because I am not live yet. Anyway, Marjorie Smith, hello and welcome. It's great to have you here in the chat. And Joffrey, I'm sensing that this is a good time and day for you to join the live stream. So I'm glad that it's working out for you. I hope. It seems to be. The RP Games, again, great to see you. He says, anyone who says there might be more, but definitely this guy's semen is there, doesn't know whose semen is there, and is hoping that science can't tell. Well, the more you get to know about Rosetta Grate, RP Games, sorry you couldn't be here last week, busy watching. Hey, there's that is far more important than watching this. You can watch this anytime, but being with your grandkids, spending physical time with your grandkids is far more important. So you do that instead. I really, I wouldn't want you to miss that time. And I'm not sure crime content is something I want to have the little, yeah, no. Especially this crime content, because it's very graphic, especially this accuser has been very, very graphic. So, yeah, you don't want your littles anywhere near when this is playing. And yes, it is a better time. So good. All right. Well, this recording of Elaine Taylor's testimony, I think, is about 48 minutes long. And then we'll have a little bit of discussion afterwards, Cherie and I, just some things that we want to talk about after, we've read and listened to this testimony. Not anything that I feel like, Elaine Taylor, even though she's incompetent and hung around with bad people in her early days in the crime lab, I don't think she's lying, and I don't feel like she's trying to throw any shade or cover. I don't feel like she's being dishonest in her testimony. The person that you need to pay attention to always in every transcript we ever read, no matter who the accuser is, you need to pay attention to Galen Gigger, ADA Galen Gigger, and he's going to be the one who's going to be doing direct examination with Elaine Taylor in this recording. He is all of those things. He is dishonest. And I'm only saying it because I know, because I hear the things that come out of his mouth, and then I read the facts of what really was. So that's how I know. Cherie may or may not agree with me. Cherie, what do you think about Galen Gigger?
He's a snake. That's the best word I can think of.
Yeah, he really is. And so closer to, well, I don't know. There are going to be some parts in this testimony where he's eliciting, I just want to kind of tell you ahead of time, he's eliciting testimony from Elaine Taylor that doesn't have anything to do with Rosetta's case. And they decided already during this trial they would not be, combining or mixing testimony from different accusers. It's already confusing enough. But without saying any names, Galen Gigger does that in this particular testimony. So, and if you're familiar enough with the case, I'll just tell you who I believe he's mixing in, and that's Janie Liggins. So if you're familiar with the case and you're familiar with the accusers, without even her name appearing, I think you'll be able to pick out, when he's saying things he shouldn't say. Marjorie Smith, touching the grass higher rated than watching it grow. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And we have a nice sunny day here, like literally, and clear sky. And here I am in the house instead of getting some much needed vitamin D. But I'm going to try to venture out when we're finished and get into the sunshine, because we haven't had a lot of clear sunny skies lately. So looking forward to it. And Lewis, thank you so much for being here. And I'm grateful and really excited that you're getting to know more about Daniel's case. Also want to say thank you to all of the members, the channel members. I have now 691 subscribers. A month ago, I was stuck at about 642 or something like that, 640 something. Now 691. I owe a great deal of that, those subscribers, to Robert Gouveia Esquire and the people in his chat and his locals, and all rallying around me 2 weeks ago to offer and share support. So
what YouTube channel is that?
It's Robert Gouveia Esquire is the name of the YouTube channel. So
Is he the one that did the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals slapdown?
no, that's
Oh,
Kurt. That's
Kurt.
on civil law. Robert and Kurt, they know each other. Very different styles for sure. Marjorie, I know that. I know that that's what you're referring to. And it's beautiful. It is. Um, so yeah, it's Robert. He reads, we, not we, he's a one-man production crew. Well, he's got a couple of people behind the scenes that help him with some things, but he is he's a criminal defense attorney. He has a practice, but he doesn't currently practice. And so he reads documents, mostly federal documents, very political. I just throwing that out there in case anybody is not interested in it. It's very right-wing political, but I'm telling you, if you're not interested in right-wing politics at all, that's okay. I don't care. But I'm learning a lot. I'll just say that I'm learning a lot from Robert's expertise and from a lot of people in his chat. And so anyway, that's as much political conversation as you'll get here. Let's see. Oh, hey, how's it going? It is so good to see you, Jerome. I appreciate you dropping in and saying hello and supporting our channel. Thank you so much. And I think most of us are fine. I think I'm fine. I can't speak for Cherie, but I am in a little bit of a better mood than I have been for quite some time. So I think the sunshine might be helping a little bit. So thank you for asking. Robert is political. Yep, he is. But he knows the law backwards and forwards. Yes, he does. And I'm, like I said, I'm learning a lot from him. So all that being said, if you haven't, please go ahead and hit the like button, because I have to say all that. Well, I don't have to, but I guess all that stuff is really important to subscribers and to getting more awareness to Daniel's case. And yes, hello, Nan's Life. It is great to see you. And I think I can smell whatever you're cooking. Welcome, and thanks for lurking and listening while we get underway. So here we go. I've spent almost 15 minutes yakking because that's kind of the thing I do best. But we'll go ahead and we'll get this recording started.
You can call your next witness.
ELAINE TAYLOR.
Just step before me. All right, if you'll have a seat over here in this chair, once you get situated, pull the microphone around in front of you. If you would state your name and spell it for us, please.
My name is ELAINE TAYLOR, ELAINE TAYLOR.
All right, thank you. Mr. Giger, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor, can you tell this jury how you're employed, please?
Yes, sir. I am a senior forensic scientist assigned to the Serology DNA section of the Laboratory Support and Services Division, which is under the Investigations Bureau of the Oklahoma City Police Department.
That's a big mouthful. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do in more layman's terms, please?
Sure. We analyze blood and body fluids as they are associated with crimes such as homicide, rape, assault with a deadly weapon, burglaries. We do some samples that involve CDS. Basically, we analyze whatever an investigator has requested for us to analyze.
In short, and it may not encompass everything you do, but do you work in the DNA lab for OCPD?
I do, sir, yes.
Tell the jury about your training and qualifications in order for you to allow you to hold a job like that and do this type of work.
I have a Bachelor of Science in Forensics from Central State University, now the University of Central Oklahoma. I have a Master's of Science in Management from Southern Nazarene University. I have been to Sex Crime School, Homicide School, Death Investigation School, Technical Investigation School, and when the quality assurance standards went into effect by the FBI for DNA laboratories, there were 4 core courses that were required: molecular cell biology, biochemistry, population statistics, and genetics. So we were all required to go back to school and take those 4 core courses. Because we are accredited, every 180 days we are proficiency tested. Basically, we are handed blind samples. We are supposed to treat them just like we would any other case we're working in the laboratory. And then the results are submitted to an agency who determines whether or not we got the right answer.
Ms. Taylor, have you been involved in the police investigation? I should say the ongoing investigation against allegations against Officer Daniel Holtzclaw.
Yes, sir, I have.
And throughout that, have you had the ability to be involved in doing testing on various different items of evidence?
Yes, sir, I have.
I want to talk specifically and only at this point about items of evidence that were collected in an address at 633 Culbertson in Oklahoma City. Are you familiar with those items of evidence, ma'am?
Yes, sir, I am.
Ma'am, whenever the witness before you said these items were collected on September the 3rd of 2014, is that consistent with your records?
I show that a request for analysis was sent over on September the 5th by Sergeant Kim Davis, and I retrieved the items that were submitted by Crime Scene Unit Staff Sergeant Craig McBride from our property room from our evidence officer at that time. Her name was Susan Gentry.
Okay, and ma'am, whenever items are seized and sealed, they're dated by the CSI field agent who actually collects those items, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And it's actually written on the packaging, the paper sack, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if he sees those and testified that he seized them and packed them on, seized them on the 3rd, packaged them on the 4th, your request on the 5th, would that be consistent with that type of timeline?
Yes, they have to have time to do their reports and seal up all the evidence and take it to the evidence storage facility, which is the property room, which is in a different building from where the crime scene and the labs are housed.
Ms. Taylor, were there essentially 2 different types of testing that you did on the items of evidence?
I did an initial report, and then about a month and a half ago, at your request,
Yes, ma'am.
I did a supplemental report.
Let's talk about the initial report that you did and the initial testing you did, okay?
Sure.
So you received a request on September the 5th of 2014. When did you begin your testing in regards to those types of those items of evidence?
Okay, I'm sorry. I need to correct something.
Please do.
I received the request for the evidence on the 8th. McBride submitted them on the 5th.
Thank you, ma'am.
When I received the evidence, the request for analysis was to specifically look for seminal fluid.
Okay, let me ask you about a little bit about the way the system works. Does the DNA lab, whenever a case is ongoing, and specifically you're the person who did the testing?
That's correct, yes.
In this case, the person who does the testing, do you get all the police reports and read all the facts and all the evidence that the police have generated about an ongoing investigation?
I have access to them, but most of the time I do not read them.
Okay, why do you typically not read all that information?
Because I don't want to be prejudiced by anything an investigator might include in a report. I want to do the testing and have the science stand on its own merits.
And is the Oklahoma DNA lab certified?
Yes, we are.
And what does that mean exactly?
We have to go through. Can I back up just a little bit?
If it'd be responsive to my question.
Yes, it would. In 2005, the Oklahoma State Legislature required that all forensic testing laboratories had to be accredited through an outside agency, and that outside agency was ASCLD. It's the Association of Crime Laboratory Directors, and they have an accreditation bureau. So when we were accredited in 2005, every year they send somebody out to do a surveillance visit to make sure that we're still complying with all of the regulations. Every 5 years, then, we go through a full and complete, a very rigorous audit, which then they determine whether or not we still are in compliance. 5 years ago, in 2010, we went through ISO accreditation, which is an international, and the standards are a little bit higher than the normal ASCLD accreditation, and we completely passed them. The DNA laboratory, because it is so highly regulated, we are also required to have an outside audit every 2 years and an internal audit every year. And there is quality assurance standards which the FBI has set forth for all laboratories that do DNA testing or database testing.
And the Oklahoma City Police Department's DNA lab meets those qualifications and
Yes.
continues to hold its certification?
We just were reaccredited in August of this year.
Is the practice of not going through and reading all the police reports something that you understand is done routinely across the United States by people in your position?
I believe that's correct.
The reason you do it is for the reason you told me just a moment ago.
Yes, I do not want to.
The reason you don't do it.
The reason I do not do it is I do not want to be prejudiced in any way, shape, or form by anything an investigator includes in his reports.
So if I understand what you told me, then you got a request on the 8th, and all you really know about it is just what that request asked you to do. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
And would that be the case in this case?
Yes.
Okay. What was your understanding that the detective was asking you to do then in that request?
Her statement to me was that the victim in this particular incident stated that she spit in her hand and wiped it on the back of a black chair.
Okay. Whenever you conduct DNA testing, the word serology has been used.
Yes.
In this courtroom. Tell me what serology means in the context of what you do, please.
Serology is the study of blood and body fluids. For many, many years, the only thing that we could use for testing was ABO, blood typing, and enzymes. When DNA became one of the standards for forensic testing, the DNA analysis in and of itself sort of consumed the parent, which was serology. So most of the time what we do is our laboratory is divided into two sections, and we're kind of in a U. One section we strictly do the serology, which is the basic presumptive testing, confirmatory testing. And once a decision is made as to what samples we're going to take for DNA analysis, then they are carried to the other side of the laboratory.
I think I understand what you said, but I just want to be very clear. So serology in that half of the lab does something that you said was a presumptive test to see if there is any blood or body fluids. Is that a fair, what you just told me?
Yes, that's a fair assessment.
What does that presumptive test involve? How do you do a presumptive test to see if there is blood or body fluids on something?
Blood we test using a hemostick, which in the medical community is to determine if there is blood in urine. And what it is, it's a little tiny yellow pad that's attached to the end of a stick. You dampen it with urine, but in our case, we take a swab and we rub the area that is in question for blood. And we then place it on a dampened end of the pad. And that little yellow pad, if there is possibly blood present, turns a bright green. If it isn't, then we assume it's another body fluid, or it's not blood or anything we can use. Seminal fluid, the presumptive test is called acid phosphatase. What we do is take a small piece of filter paper that is clean and sterile, place a drop of distilled water on it, and we smash it on the area that we believe could have a stain on it that's possibly seminal fluid. We place it on a weigh boat, and then we drip the acid phosphatase solution onto it. If it turns a bright, brilliant purple, that is a presumptive presumptive test to us that there is a very real possibility that seminal fluid is present.
Blood contains DNA. Is that true?
Except the red blood cells, and their sole purpose in blood is to carry oxygen to organs.
So just because you have a cell, it doesn't necessarily mean it contains DNA in the human body from what I just understood you say. Some cells do, some cells don't.
Well, all cells do, but red blood cells.
All right, thank you. You also, then you talked about semen and how you do a presumptive test for semen.
Correct.
Okay, so blood is a body fluid. Semen is a body fluid.
Yes.
What about saliva? Do you test for saliva?
Most of the time there is a presumptive test for saliva, but it's a little bit questionable. Sometimes it works very well, and sometimes it doesn't. Now, when saliva is suspected in a case, generally we don't do any presumptive test. We just go ahead and run it straight through for DNA analysis.
Is all DNA the same? And what I mean is this. Is the DNA that you can find in blood, or the DNA that you can find in saliva, or the DNA that you can find in seminal fluid, is it all the same type of cells, or is it different?
Epithelial cells that you find in most organs and body fluids, except for seminal fluid, is just the nucleus of the cell, which actually physically houses the DNA, which makes you very unique to yourself. You inherit half your DNA from your mother and half your DNA from your father. The only people that have the exact same DNA are identical twins. And I say identical twins, that they come from the same cell. It's just split in two and made twins. Sperm cells are just a little bit different because they have a harder outside shell, and it requires us to use two enzymes to break open that shell in order for it to spill out its contents.
Based on that, let me ask another question then. If I ask it the wrong way, I guess correct me. But sperm cells' DNA are different, and you can identify them as being different than epithelial cells?
Microscopically is a microscopic examination of a body fluid suspected to be semen and contain sperm cells. We examine microscopically, and you can very quickly see them because they look like an ice cream cone. We use a Christmas tree stain. It stains the head of the cell red and the tail is bright green.
Okay, so they look different microscopically.
Yes, they do.
Do the cells in blood that contain DNA, do they look different than semen?
Yes, the cells in blood or other tissues look like a fried egg.
Okay, do they look the same as the epithelial cells?
Yes.
Okay, so basically you have semen, that's its own thing appearance-wise, but everything else in the body that's going to contain DNA is going to look the same?
Essentially, yes. There's, other cells that fight infections and this type of thing that have a little bit different makeup. But essentially, an epithelial cell in an organ, skin cells look like a fried egg.
Okay. Are epithelial cells analogous to me calling them skin cells as you just did?
Yes.
And so whether it's an organ inside the body, it's still containing epithelial cells, which would be analogous to skin cells. Is that what I'm understanding you to say, or am I making it too complicated?
That's a good analogy, yes.
Let me ask this then. I'm not trying to be graphic, but if I had saliva and I knew it was saliva, and if I had vaginal fluid and I knew it was vaginal fluid, neither one of those are going to contain in and of themselves sperm cells, correct?
Unless
there's been a penis in there and done something. I'm just saying.
Yes.
If someone spit or if you swab someone's vagina absent sex act, the DNA contained in both of those is going to be the same type of cell?
Yes, and that only requires one enzyme to break the nucleus open to spill out the contents.
But if you're dealing with sperm, it's going to look different?
Yes.
Okay. The jury has heard some testimony about swabbing the inside of someone's mouth to get a DNA comparison. And it's been described as they rub the inside of their mouth, not just getting saliva, it wet, but actually rubbing it against the inside of your mouth on the skin.
Yes.
If that's the right word.
Yes, that is.
Why do you want it done that way? Why do you want it to actually be rubbed up against the skin?
Well, inside your mouth, you have basically what is called buccal cells. It's a buccal swab. There are cells in your mouth and they're beside your teeth. And if you vigorously rub them, you can get the outside cells, which then we can use as a reference. It's the least invasive of ways in order to get a reference sample. We used to collect blood, but since DNA is so hardy and the cells in your mouth are so easily accessible, the community has gone to collecting just reference mouth swabs to use for knowns.
I may have some more questions about collection later, but I want to move on with that. In this case, can you tell me on the first analysis, were you looking for epithelial cells or were you looking for sperm cells?
I was specifically asked and was looking for the presence of acid phosphatase on.
So presumptive test positive for semen.
Correct.
That was your understanding of what needed to be done with this evidence.
That is correct.
All right, ma'am. What items of evidence did you do? Did you examine or did you conduct a presumptive test for acid phosphatase or sperm cells?
Okay, on the black leather seat back, a pair of underwear which appeared to be maybe briefs, and a pair of black underwear. I did presumptive tests on those 3 items, and they were all negative for the presence of seminal fluid.
Give me just a second, ma'am, please. I want to make sure that everybody's followed. Ma'am, I'm going to put State's Exhibit number 235. Is that consistent with your memory of what the black chair appeared to be that the back of the black chair that you did your presumptive tests for seminal fluid on?
It had been taken off.
Exactly.
Yes.
Didn't look like that, but the leather part is the part that, or the plastic, whatever it is, part?
Yes, that is correct.
Is 227 your memory of the men's briefs?
Yeah, they were all by themselves.
Exactly. And this is the pictures I'm showing you.
Right.
As they were collected at the scene, but that's consistent with what you tested, correct?
Yes.
And then this picture is hard to see, but if I represent it to you, it's been testified. This is a pair of black panties. Is that consistent with the black underwear that you remember testing?
If those are black underwear that McBride collected, yes, they are.
All right. So on those items of evidence, you just press something up against it is what you're doing to try to see if it shows a presumptive test.
What we do is we take a piece of sterile, clean filter paper. It's white. Just dampen it very lightly with distilled water and then press it. And in this case, I pressed it in the crotch of the underwear, and then I flipped it over and placed it on top of a weigh boat and added the acid phosphatate solution to it. And the reaction was negative. I did the same thing with the men's underwear, an area in the front. I pressed the dampened filter paper on top of it and added the acid phosphatase solution to it, and it was negative. There were some areas on the black seat that in the light, they kind of looked a little different. So I circled them with a silver magic marker, and then I tested them in exactly the same way. All of the samples were negative for the presence of acid phosphatase, which, as I said, is a presumptive for seminal fluid.
Were you finished? I'm sorry.
I went ahead and swabbed the underwear and the crotch of the panties just in case there might be something present that I wasn't getting a positive reaction to, and took those samples for DNA analysis.
All right, Mr. Giger, before we get into that, we'll go ahead and take our afternoon break. All right, let the record reflect that all members of the jury are present. Counsel for the state, counsel for the defendant, and the defendant is present. Ms. Taylor, let me remind you, you are still under oath. Mr. Giger, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Still talking about that first analysis you did looking for seminal fluid or sperm cells. You said you swabbed the underwear too. That's different than doing this presumptive test, right? Did you actually take buccal swabs and swab the areas of the underwear and the panties?
Well, it's cotton tip swabs.
Explain.
Q-tips. I think everybody knows what a Q-tip is. The swabs that we use are basically single-ended Q-tips with a long plastic handle on them. And we can dampen them with distilled water, and then we vigorously rub an area. In this particular case, it would have been the crotch of the panties and the inside of the front of the men's underwear.
Then you let those dry, I assume?
Actually, I just placed them into glycine envelopes, which is kind of a slicky type paper, and just slide them in there, and they dry very quickly.
All right. Eventually, not only was it a negative test for your presumptive test of the items, but did you get a test back as to the swabs to see if there was any sperm cells located on either one of the pair of underwear?
I was able to get no results in the DNA analysis.
And you reported that basically that we didn't find any sperm in the room.
That's correct, yes.
At least on the items that were tested?
Yes, that is correct, sir.
Okay. Subsequently, ma'am, you and I met in preparation of this case approximately 2 months ago, correct?
Correct, yes.
And did I ask you to go back and look at some items of evidence, not looking for sperm, but looking just to see if there were epithelial cells?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
And it was specifically the black vinyl leather pleather seat back.
And did I give you information as to what the reason we wanted you to look to see if there were epithelial cells on that?
Basically, yes.
Okay. And was that okay with protocols for me to go back? Did we violate anything for ASCLD purposes or anything by having a meeting like that?
No, not at all.
What was your understanding that potentially might have been deposited on the back of that chair that I wanted you to look for from a DNA standpoint?
It was my understanding that the contact with this particular individual was oral penile. And with the information that the detective had given me that she spit in her hand and then wiped it on the seat back, at the time I was specifically just looking for sperm cells. When Mr. Giger asked me to go back, he wanted me to just look for epithelial cells.
Epithelial would be skin cells, right?
Skin cells, yes.
All right. Maybe obvious, but can epithelial cells, are they more easily transferred onto another object if there is fluid involved?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And I don't know if this is a good example or not, but if I touch something like this, is there a chance I could leave my DNA on that?
This is considered contact.
Okay.
And it's epithelial cells from your skin. Right now, we're moving into winter. I notice my hands are kind of getting a little dry, and so the flakiness on your skin that you see dandruff is basically epithelial cells. And those cells, you can deposit them, but then they're very transient. If you, sir, came over here and sat down and put your hand on top of where I did, chances are you might take some of my epithelial cells with you and deposit some of yours.
That has an impact on being able to determine a DNA profile as to how many people may have touched something?
Absolutely, yes.
But in theory, it's possible.
It's possible, yes.
Is it more likely if I were to move my tongue around and get skin cells mixed in with the saliva and then spit on something? Is it more likely than that, in theory, that there might be a better chance of getting, if it's deposited on a piece of evidence and then we can swab that evidence to see?
Yes, it's possible, but you have to also do these type of testings fairly quickly after something like this would be deposited, because they can, especially on this vinyl type pleather seat back, somebody sitting on it, maybe moving it would probably wipe most of it off.
Okay. And likewise, if something like that had happened on the top of this chair, and then people move this chair around for whatever reason, they put their hand there, the more contact it has, the more transient it is, the more likelihood that if there was a sample, there is going to be degraded.
Correct, yes.
Is it possible, though, in a case like this, that if someone's penis goes into someone's mouth, as the allegations are, skin cells from the penis could be transferred inside the mouth?
It's possible, yes.
Not just my skin cells from my mouth spitting, but that works the other way too?
Yes.
Okay. And then if there was saliva close in time transferred, it's possible then that even that could be transferred as well?
It's possible, but the point you have to remember about the oral cavity is you are constantly cleansing it with saliva and you're swallowing. And, this type of cells would be swallowed and end up in your stomach and through the digestive system.
This is a little off track, but since you brought that up, you're aware that when a sane exam is done, sometimes swabs are done of the inside of the alleged victim's mouth if there's some oral/penile or some sexual contact alleged?
If a victim tells the sane nurse, they will do an oral wash, which is they put some sterile distilled water in their mouth and they make them swoosh and then expel it into a tube, which we then can test. They also are requested if there is any possibility that there's oral contact in a sexual assault, that they do a pre-rinse of the oral cavity before they do actually physically do the oral wash. A lot of times they will swab around a victim's mouth.
Is it important in your experience in DNA collection that the quicker you can get the oral wash done and swabs, especially talking about oral, the better?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that because of the continuing cleansing process?
Yes, time is of the essence in the oral situation.
If hours go by, is it your experience that the likelihood of getting DNA in situations where there's been either ejaculation or not, but a penis and a mouth, if 2 hours goes by, is a likelihood of getting evidence in your experience greatly diminished?
Yes, it is.
Because of what you just said?
Yes.
Essentially, you would swallow the cells if they were there.
Yes, exactly.
In this case, ma'am, whenever I met with you and asked to see if we could find some epithelial cells, did you conduct that type of a test, and what did you do?
Yes, I took 2 of these cotton tip swabs. They come to us, they're sterile. We buy them so they're sealed and packaged. I wasn't sure. We have a policy that we have to keep half of our evidence in case a defense expert or the defense attorneys in a case want to do further testing or to verify that our testing is in fact correct. So I took 2 swabs. I dampened each one of them with just a drop of distilled water, and I vigorously rubbed these 2 swabs over the front. And then I took 2 more swabs, did the same thing, and vigorously rubbed them over the back of this black vinyl chair back.
In an attempt to try to pick up anything?
Yes, absolutely.
Ma'am, you've talked to me a little bit, I think you said a moment ago, about the transfer, and I think we used the example of me touching this podium and chair or whatever.
Yes.
Does the material that the DNA potentially is transferred on have an impact on the ability for the DNA to be captured and continue to exist?
Oh, absolutely. A slick surface like this wood or your chairs, a cleaning person can come by and pretty much just wipe any epithelial cells from these types of items. Where if it's, a clothing item, underwear, pants, a shirt that can absorb a body fluid, the chances are greater that it will stay on the piece of cloth as opposed to a piece of wood or even a piece of concrete.
And we're talking about specifically, my examples have been if a body fluid, saliva, or any other body fluid other than sperm is containing epithelial cells and that then is transferred onto something. That's your context of your answer?
A liquid.
Okay. Does the amount of time between the alleged transfer with the body fluid onto an object versus the time it's then sampled, not talking about a mouth now, but talking an inanimate object, for example, in this case, the chair, does it factor in that there's a 5-month period from the alleged event in April until the DNA of the item is collected and stored properly in September?
The time frame is what your major problem is with getting a sample from the front and back of that chair.
From the vinyl chair?
Yes.
Okay. For the reasons that I think you've already told me.
Yes.
All right. Whenever you conducted your analysis, were you able to extract any epithelial DNA cell material from the chair?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us a little bit were you able to get a complete profile?
On one sample, and the other sample was a partial.
Okay. Explain to me what you mean, and explain to the jury, please, what you mean between a complete DNA profile versus a partial DNA profile.
Are you allowed to show me my chart?
I can, if that will help you answer my question. Can I approach Judge?
You may approach.
Ma'am, I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit number 248 and ask if you recognize what that is.
Yes, this is the chart that went with the supplemental report, sir.
And would that be assisting you not only in talking about what the findings were, but also explaining what those findings mean?
Yes.
Okay. And is it an accurate copy of the epithelial analysis you did in October?
Yes, sir, it is.
Offer.
No objection. All right. State's Exhibit 248 will be admitted.
Can you see?
Okay, the numbers across the very top are the locations of the DNA. In the very first box, there are...
This?
Yes, there are 4 blue colors. There are 5 colors in. It's supposed to be green. It's a little hard to tell. The next 4 are yellow, and the last 3 are red. And, this is a designation of, how quickly they come off of the genetic analyzer.
There's numbers on those?
Yes.
Different. Are those called loci?
Loci, yes, they are.
Loci. Explain a DNA strand in layman's terms and what these loci mean and how we pick this loci.
Okay. Early on, when the scientists were plotting the DNA chain, when a specific location was found, many of the scientists were given the ability to name that particular area. Okay, if you look at the second one in green, it says THO1. Okay, that actually is on chromosome D3, but the scientists named it THO1 for whatever reason. The same thing is true of the VWA loci and the TPOX and the FGA.
Ms. Taylor, let me just ask this question, see if I'm tracking you. I've seen pictures of that DNA helix.
Right,
Correct? That's obviously a rendition and blown up microscope many, many times magnified.
right,
On that, there's many, many different parts of DNA.
yes.
And these are there, how many are there that we have identified?
We use 16.
16 different spots on a DNA strand, correct?
Yes, that go with the kit we use.
That we use to identify different loci.
Right. Now, just to kind of give you an idea real quick, where it says D, it means DNA. The next number is the chromosome number. The S means that the DNA is single-stranded, and the last numbers are the base pair location on that particular chromosome that you would find this.
And essentially it's standard with the DNA processing kit you use. It goes through some type of scientific processing and then that location, if DNA is present on the sample we have at that strand location, it shows up.
Correct.
And then you give it numbers and...
Well, it shows up as a number, and that number is called an allele. Okay, if you start with D8, the very first one in blue, this particular sample is a mixture. And I say that it is a mixture because there are more than 2 alleles at several of these locations. The reason that they are in parentheses and they are in red is because they are in what is called a stochastic area. It is an area that we can look at, that we can see the numbers that are present. But the only thing we can do with those numbers is eliminate an individual as a potential contributor. Because this particular profile is the major component is the component that is across the top in black, not in parentheses. And it comes from an individual who has the numbers 13, 14 at D8. And then you can go down each one, and the individual has a homozygote 28 at the next location.
And so that I follow you, certainly from the sample is from the black chair back, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you got DNA evidence through the process of identifying it, and it goes through some different scientific tests and processes.
Correct. There's essentially 4 basic steps.
Okay. And you went through those 4 steps.
Yes.
And after you go through those 4 steps, you identify these locations and did you say homozygotes?
Oh, homozygotes. Yes,
did you say homozygote?
No, I did not. I made it much more difficult than homozygotes. And I actually know it's the right way to say it.
Okay, well, whatever you want to do.
Jeez, I'm not going back. It's fine.
Okay.
The numbers that are exactly the same, the 28, there's going to be 2 of them because you inherited that 28 from both your mother and your dad. Okay, but the 13, 14 you inherited, 1 from mom and 1 from dad.
So whoever left this DNA evidence behind on the black chair
Yes.
had a mom who had a 13 or a 14 and a dad who had a 13 or 14.
Right.
Those 2 come together, boom, and you got this person.
Right.
The next location, the D2, both parents had a 28.
Right. So it's a homozygote.
Next one of the parents had a 8, one had a 12.
Right. Okay.
And so forth all the way across, right?
So what we do with this type of profile, because it is a major with a minor, that individual that contributed the major portion of this particular profile in this mixture is an unknown male source.
Okay.
Everything that's in parentheses there's nothing that we can really do with that to identify who that second individual may or may not be.
Ms. Taylor, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, and if you need to explain some more, but if I keep looking across those top, that very first number line, you got a complete profile from the back of the black chair?
Correct.
4 epithelial cells.
Yes.
But included in that, you also have other DNA material that came from somebody else?
Right.
Because you have more than 2 numbers showing up.
Absolutely, that is correct. So it's a mixture.
And that's, when you say mixture, it means
yes,
there's more than one person's DNA
right,
floating around in here. All right. Now, when I get to this line that says XY, can you explain to me what that is?
XY is a melogenin. It's the sex chromosome. X and Y are males. Females are two X's.
Okay, so we know that the mixture that's shooting across the top of this, at least the major component, the first two numbers all the way across is a male.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, but there's other stuff mixed in as well that we're not sure about.
Correct.
And that's why we just know it's there, correct?
It's there and it's considered inconclusive.
Okay. Now, ma'am, in your chart when I go down, and I don't want to, let's try to get it where everybody can see. So the black chair back is the first column, the first line going across.
Correct.
The front chair back is the
Second.
And on this, did you get a complete profile?
No, it's a partial.
Okay. And for example, when it says NR at the C,
CSF1PO.
genetic loci,
Yes, there were no results.
and to get a complete profile, you want 16 numbers.
Correct.
You want each of the different locations to have a genetic reading.
Yes.
When you don't get a complete profile, is the ability to determine who the DNA came from affected?
It diminishes greatly, yes.
And the less you have, the harder it gets?
Correct, yes.
All right. Down at the bottom of in this first row, you have here D. Holtzclaw and R. Grate. Is that Daniel Holtzclaw and Rosetta Grate?
It is.
The jury has heard evidence about Mr. Holtzclaw being swabbed for DNA purposes.
Yes.
Is that what that is reflecting? We had swabs from him that he gave us voluntarily, and you ran his DNA profile off of those swabs. That's what those are?
Absolutely. That is correct.
The jury hasn't heard yet, but was it your understanding Rosetta Grate also submitted to a buccal swab, and we got
Yes.
her DNA profile?
That's correct.
So in this situation, why is it that you included Daniel Holtzclaw and Rosetta Grate's DNA in your comparison?
Well, because they were the two individuals that potentially could have been part of the profile on the chairback.
With the evidence we had in this, at this point in the investigation, you knew those were the two parties involved?
That is correct, yes.
All right. So this profile, let's just compare if we can this first column. We know the back of the chair has a 13 and 14.
Correct.
And we know the sample we got on the front of the chair has a 13 and 14.
Correct.
But when we get down to Mr. Holtzclaw, we see it's a 13, but he's got a 16.
Yes, that is correct.
So does that eliminate him as a possible DNA source?
Yes.
So once we get that, it's not a match. We know it's not him.
That's correct.
Likewise, even with Rosetta Grate, now it's male DNA, correct?
Correct. And she's a female.
And she's a female.
Yes.
Because when I look, when I look down here, this is Mr. Holtzclaw. He's XY.
Yes.
Ms. Grate is X, so we already know.
Yes.
Without looking at numbers, because our component is a male, that it can't be her DNA.
Correct.
The front chair back, it's a partial DNA profile.
It is.
But even it being a partial, and as I go slowly across, there's some red numbers. And tell me again why some of the numbers are red and some of the numbers are black.
Okay, by the guidelines that DNA laboratories for interpretation is set up, we have to have two thresholds. One threshold is considered the analytical threshold, which is the threshold that everything in black is set to. What is called stochastic threshold, and I can't really tell you why it gave it that name. It sits between the analytical and our cutoff. Now, we look at that because we use that threshold to eliminate individuals. If somebody has similar numbers at these locations, we cannot include them. The only thing we can do is exclude an individual because it is in that what you would consider DNA gray area, but we are required to report them.
Okay, and that's why they show up in red.
Exactly.
When I continue on across on a partial profile from the front of the chair back, I'm not exactly sure what that means. You have it labeled front chair back.
Well, it's the front chair of the back, the front portion of the chair back. I'm not sure why.
You swabbed a different spot.
Yes.
The first row is one spot you swabbed from. The second row is the other swab of the chair.
Yes.
All right. Now I notice when I come all the way across here again, it shows that the DNA partial profile, even though it's not complete, is still showing it to be male DNA.
Correct.
All right. But it appears like, for example, if I look at the TPOX column,
Yes.
that there's a 6 and a 10. And you can exclude somebody with a 9 in the top row.
Correct.
But the major component of the male DNA profile, even though it's partial, at the genetic loci is an 8.
Correct.
So does that tell you that there's 2 men or at least 2 male contributors that have left DNA on this chair? Because they can't be the same person, right? Because the 8's not in the 6 and the 10.
Correct.
So we know there's at least 2 men that have been in this room. But when I go down and compare, okay, Mr. Holtzclaw's got an 8, but he's also got an 11. So he doesn't fit. The 8 here, there's 8s, right? At this location, 8, 8.
Well, it could be 8-8 or it could be 8-10, but the 10 being where it is you can consider it drop out or drop in, but it's present.
But again, you exclude Mr. Holtzclaw
Yes.
because at this location, he's got an 8, 10. So it's not his skin cells or epithelial cells
Absolutely.
that are being picked up. We know that.
Yes, that is correct.
And what we know is that in this bedroom on this chair, there's at least 2 different men that have left DNA behind on it.
Correct.
But we know Rosetta Grate's DNA doesn't show up on it either.
Correct.
Based on what you know about this case and your experience as a DNA analyst, does that surprise you that even in this room that Ms. Grate was living in, her DNA is not on that chair?
Because of the time lag between, when this all occurred and the time that the crime scene investigator went out and collected it, it's not impossible that she would not even show up.
And is that also due to all the other things you've said too? The way it could have been transferred, the timing involved in her putting her DNA on it, and material itself.
Correct, yes.
But nevertheless, in this investigation, we tried and we looked.
That's correct, yes.
There's DNA evidence on it, but we really don't know whose it is.
Yes.
This did not end your involvement in this investigation. Fair enough?
That is correct, yes, sir.
There's other items that you tested?
Yes.
Just one second. Ma'am, if clothing, you talked about how if a liquid is transferred that potentially could contain either epithelial cells or I guess if sperm could be a liquid and it gets on clothing, it's more likely to last longer because it could be absorbed.
In material, yes.
In material, yes, ma'am.
Yes, uh-huh.
If you wash that in a washing machine, what's it do to the DNA evidence?
Washes it away.
So it's gone.
Yes.
That's all. Pass the witness.
All right. Any cross-examination? I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Everything you test about, at the very conclusion of your testimony, Mr. Giger, said that there was 2 male DNAs found on the evidence you test, but we just don't know who they are, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
But you would agree with me. We do know that they are not Officer Holtzclaws.
I would, absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay. Pass the witness.
I have one question. Ma'am, are you saying that because his DNA wasn't found, then Officer Holtzclaw was not in that room?
I can't say that.
Okay, scientifically.
Could
anybody say that?
I have no idea who was or wasn't in that room.
Is it possible for me to go into a room, be there for a few minutes and leave and not leave DNA behind that we would find 5 months later?
Sure.
Judge, just object to the form. All right. Did you say, is it possible or it's possible?
I thought I said, is it possible?
All right. Overruled.
Is that possible?
I'm sorry, now I forgot what you asked me.
If I remember, if I go into a room, stay there for a while, is it possible that I could go into a room, stay there for a while, and leave and not leave DNA behind?
Yes, it's possible.
Okay. Scientifically, we're just limited on it. We're not that good yet.
Right.
Pass the witness.
Mr. Adams? No, Your Honor. All right. Thank you, Miss Taylor. You may step down.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I couldn't find my mute button. So that was. I remember when I was talking to those who helped read this, I was telling them that I might have even said this last week in the live stream that this is probably going to be boring because it's DNA and it's all those words and that not everybody understands. But actually, I found it kind of interesting, to be honest. Um, and maybe the reason I found it interesting because there was absolutely no, zero, zilch, nada forensic evidence that Daniel Holtzclaw was ever in that room. Yeah, I have to, say that yes, Giger at the end got the well, knowing Giger, he was trying to get her to say that he was trying to get her to give an absolute on the whole, could I leave DNA behind? And my headphones are going to die. That's just awesome. I might have to switch speakers here. So at any rate, yes, 5 months had gone by the time this alleged assault occurred. However, it's been several weeks now, but if you go back to Rosetta Grate's trial testimony, she said that this lasted, the first part of the assault, the oral sodomy, lasted 5 to 10 minutes. And the second part, the actual rape, lasted 5 to 10 minutes. So 10 minutes to 20 minutes is what she said at trial. In the jailhouse interviews, she says, like at least 30 minutes. She tells Kim Davis it was at least 30 minutes. And then in her preliminary testimony, she says it was at least 30 minutes. But by the time she gets to trial, of course, nearly a year later, it was only 5 to 10 minutes because the radio traffic that was done on this call when he took her home from where she was getting drugs and prostituting herself, he did I think it's a 1014 or something like that, 1014 or 1010 police call that he was transferring a female from one location to the other. He called that in. He called in his mileage and he called that all in. And yes, he did stop in the driveway and he did walk up to the door. I don't remember. It's been a while since I asked this question of Daniel, but I don't remember if he went in or if he doesn't remember if he went in or not. At any rate, he was there less than 13 minutes based on his police records proof. Anyway, so she says that he took her followed her upstairs to her room and then did the oral sodomy first. And there's a whole bunch of lies in that. I don't know. It's been so long. It's kind of worth going back and listening to the jailhouse interviews and at least the preliminary and her trial testimonies because there's so many lies that are told. But yes, I saw somebody, I wanted to say, there's been great comments in here. So thank you guys, all of you guys. Somebody said something about her being coached and I lost the comment and who said it. But yes, she was definitely, all of the accusers were coached before, between preliminary testimonies and their trial testimonies. And that becomes evident with some upcoming accusers that we're going to go into. But yes, it was Richard and Jennifer. Yeah, Richard and Jennifer. So this is help me, Cherie. I don't know if she's here. She might be visiting with her daughter, but It got so the lies and the what I saw or what I believe was coaching, um, from the beginning of this accuser all the way till when we finish next week with Kim Davis's testimony, is all very well coached and rehearsed. And Rosetta Grate, if you remember in Will Carter's testimony last weekend, he talked about how smart she was, and in the news clip from when she called the cops 911 to her house to report a fake shooting to get out of getting a ticket or arrested on the side of the road. Um, he's in the news interview and he says that Rosetta's slick. She's slick and she's manipulative. So even though she is a heavy, was / maybe still is a heavy drug user, she's smart. She is manipulative and she's very sneaky. And so it was, I don't know what the right word is that I want to use, but for her, they did the first jailhouse interview, and I don't know. I felt like I could tell she was lying, but it's really hard for me now to say that because I know so much about each one of these accusers, and if they had a recorded interview, which not all of them did, you know, I know their lies, I know their body language, I know the sounds of their voices by now. Not in the physical sense, of course, but it's just been 4 years of studying this and researching this, so I have a pretty good idea. And when I remember watching Rosetta Grate's first jailhouse interview and thinking, trying to not be biased about it, thinking she's lying. How anybody who knows nothing about it can tell she's got to be lying or embellishing or whatever other words you want to add. But she does that throughout the whole thing, and at no time does Rosetta seem like she's on drugs or anything like that, or mentally ill. Whereas a lot of the other accusers, you can tell some of them are currently on drugs while they're being questioned or interviewed, and or have severe mental health problems. So, but not with Rosetta. And the gall of that woman to have that first jailhouse interview, lie about the accusation altogether, lie about her dad and what he had to say about it, to then, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, I can't remember the dates now, but 4 or 5 days later, call the detectives back and say, hey, I have more information I want to give you. Now that my head's clear, basically she's saying, now that I've been, clean and dry for, a few days, I can think clearer now. I can think better. I remember things now. And she feeds them, like she basically draws a diagram and tells the detectives, there's this black chair, there's this bed, there's a towel with the blue stripe in it, that if you had a chance to watch McBride's testimony, there was never a white towel with a blue stripe in it, but you did see some underwear, dingy and nasty as they were, that had a stripe around the waistband, as do whitey tighties. But, at any rate, there was no towel to be found, and Sergeant McBride said that he knew that there was a towel he was supposed to be looking for, but he didn't find one. So there's a black pair of panties. There's this towel that she allegedly wiped herself with after the rape, and threw it in the closet, she thought. And she makes up this very elaborate lie. Now, Giger, during this testimony, is trying to convince the jury, I guess, or himself, that, things were out, he's asked, and I think he asked McBride the same thing. He asked McBride in that testimony, did anything look like it was moved out of place or, in the wrong place or, all those kinds of questions. And, of course, the sergeant would have no idea that's collecting the evidence, but I believe he said not that he was aware of. But during this part of the testimony, all of the stuff about the chair, he's going into all this information about the chair because of Grate saying that she, after the oral sodomy, that she spit into her hand or she wiped her mouth with her hand or something, and then wiped her hand on the seat back of this chair, not on the seat sitting part of the chair, but on the seat back of the chair. So it got confusing because neither Elaine Taylor nor Galen Gigger, can speak, with normal words to try to explain what they were talking about. And it got confusing because you're talking about black back chair back, and so it did get confusing even just reading it. But at any rate, so Gigger's trying to say that everything was moved in the room since Rosetta was in it last. Other people have been in there using the room, sitting in the chair, sleeping in the bed, and wiping the seat of the chair with their butt or whatever. And he's just saying that wiped away all this DNA that she says is there. But the truth of the matter is that there was never any DNA there. And no forensic evidence there. Definitely not upstairs in that bedroom. So anyway, I take the long road, the long path to try to explain things, but let's see. Are you here, Cherie? No, she's still visiting. So, but I wanted to say when I mentioned before we started that, guys, give me just a second. My headphones are about to die, and so I got to turn on my other speaker really quick. Okay, I don't know. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Anyway, Cherie, when you come back in, if you can just say you're here or whatever, so I know if my speaker's working or not. But anyway,
I'm here for right. I'm here right now.
Okay,
I might have to step out, but
that's
I'm here
okay.
for now.
No, you're okay. So when I mentioned before we started that he was talking about somebody else's alleged DNA evidence besides Rosetta Grate, which was not supposed to be done, but because he didn't mention a name, I think that's how he got away with it. And because the defense attorney, it just went over his head. But anyway, because he should have objected, is my point. But when Gigger's talking about the epithelial cells and a penis in the mouth, and how long before, how long does it take for it to degrade? The sooner the better, to collect that evidence. And there's a lot more detail in the testimony about that. But it's my opinion that he's really eliciting testimony from Elaine Taylor about the evidence in Janie Ligon's accusation, which again, way back at the very beginning of this series, 40 episodes back now, I think, that was Janie Ligon's accusation was that the officer forced her to put his penis in her mouth. And so she did it. She says she did it. Her times on her story varied and changed a lot too. But when they took her to the hospital for the SANE exam, they did the oral wash that ELAINE Taylor described during this testimony, which again, because the alleged DNA evidence for Rosetta Grate was, 5 months earlier. Well, 5 months before she was asked to test it. So doing a SANE exam or an oral rinse, there was no point in that. But with Janie Liggins, they did do it within just a few hours of when she claimed that she had been assaulted. Also, Janie Liggins' DNA evidence, forensic evidence, came back 100% free and clear of any evidence, forensic evidence from Officer Daniel Holtzclaw. Not on her clothing, not on her mouth, in her mouth, around her face, nothing. Zero evidence that Daniel assaulted her. And he was sentenced to, I want to say 60 years, maybe 40 to 60 years for Janie Liggins, with no evidence, with nothing but her words. And now here we are with Rosetta Grate, again, zero forensic evidence of any kind that Daniel was in that room, and and he got 20 years for the rape of Rosetta, based on her words, y'all, just based on her words. And it's just, again, one of my words that I just can't find any other word. It's just infuriating, because like I said, and like I think was mentioned also in the chat, I don't feel like ELAINE Taylor lied at all in this testimony. I feel like she was honest, and I mean, I don't know about DNA. Only other, what I learned about, from somebody like Scooby, or other people, in different communities talking about DNA. But I can tell by the chat that several of you do know about some DNA and forensics and that kind of stuff, which is awesome. I love seeing those comments. But it's just infuriating to me that he's accused of these heinous acts that are alleged to have DNA evidence, but the DNA evidence comes back that there is none, but he still gets convicted. No witnesses, nobody, some of the accusers say, yeah, I did tell somebody right after it happened. Well, that's debatable. And even if they did tell somebody, the accuser can't remember who it was, where it was, when it was. Were they doing drugs? Were they, none of them can remember any of that. So they can't call any of those people that they told in to testify for them, except for Johnny Grate, Rosetta's dad, and Will Carter, of course. But we're talking about a father, and we're talking about a roommate. And then when you mix that with the possibility of money, I mean, I don't think that I personally know anybody, or at least I hope that I don't know anybody who would lie for their daughter or their roommate or anything like that for money. I don't think that I do, but the amount of lying that we see go on with this entire case with all the accusers, the amount of lying to me is despicable. And when people say to me, naysayers or guilters, whatever you want to call them, what would be the purpose of them railroading, of them setting him up? Well, there's several reasons, but as far as the accusers are concerned, some of them have testified. I don't remember which ones, but maybe it'll come up in a future accuser that we're going to do later. But I know that some of them have testified that they were told by detectives that, there could be, they could get involved in a lawsuit and win a lot of money. You guys, these women are all of them, to one degree or another, varying different vices and crimes, drug addicts, prostitutes, have anywhere from mild to severe mental health issues. These women live some of them just literally live on the streets. Terry Morris, she didn't have any place to live, and she was horribly, this is controversial, but she was horribly mistreated by Rocky Gregory and Lieutenant Tim Musney. They took advantage of her mental illness and her addictions. And even though she still lied, and I still despise her for lying on Daniel Holtzclaw, she was bullied and abused. I don't want to say abused, but having a very clear mind and a sane mind and a non-drug addicted mind, when I watched the interviews with Terry Morris that Rocky Gregory did, it's disgusting how he talks to her. And they did it with all of these accusers, always something that they threw in there. But for Rosetta Grate to give her first initial fake lie story on that first day, then to spend several days coming up with, my opinion, of course, coming up with that drastic lie about all this DNA evidence that they were going to find. It wasn't a you might or perhaps or I think, or she says implicitly you're going to find his DNA all over the room, on the chair, on the towel, on the underwear, the panties, on the bed, on the comforter, on the bed rail, all these different places. And there just was none. Could it have just, been wiped away, washed away, cleaned away in that 5-month period of time? It's possible. But according to Will Carter, last week's testimony, nobody really went in there except for Rosetta Grate's daughter to get some of her belongings. And she was there for just a few minutes, got the stuff she needed, and left. So there's just a lot of lies and a lot of fuckery in every accuser's case, in this trial. So there's been a lot of great comments. Cherie, I don't know if you're available or not, but if you are, if you'd like to add anything or bring anything up that I missed.
I read through it again this morning, and the main thing I thought about was that why does Elaine Taylor need to have the police reports? I think that whoever's doing the testing should not know what the police want. They should, or what they think, or whatever. They need to know just enough to, like where to look on the chair or whatever. I don't know. However they figure that out, so that they don't, even if it's unconscious, have that bias. Like when we were reading that book, Death and Justice, by Mark Furman, he said that when what was her name? Gilchrist.
Joyce Gilchrist, yeah.
Yeah, the predecessor to Elaine Taylor, that the police would sometimes be, in there, this is who we think did it, they would say to her before she did the test, and voila, So I guess what I'm saying is they should have double blind testing or some kind of blind testing where they don't necessarily know what the police want, to happen, and find out what it actually is. And so that's what I
Right.
think about that.
Well, and I agree. She did. She did say in her testimony that because Giger asked her, did you read the police reports or the info? And she said no, that she didn't. That she doesn't like, and for the reasons that you mentioned, she
That's a
doesn't want
good
to.
answer, but is that
Yeah,
true?
exactly. Yeah. I know. Yeah. So, well, and I just listened to a portion of her, Elaine Taylor's deposition yesterday too, and she says that very emphatically to Kathleen Zellner. Nope. I never read the reports. I don't want to know anything about. And you're right. That's the way it should be. But I'm telling you, when you think about, for those of you who don't know, who are still listening, when you consider the fact that Elaine Taylor was subordinate initially to Joyce Gilchrist, who Cherie just mentioned. I have a video about Joyce Gilchrist, several videos actually, about Bob Macy and Joyce Gilchrist in Oklahoma City and how corrupt they were. The Gilchrist forensic evidence analysis, she was the former crime lab analyst. She was eventually fired from, not soon enough, because too many men, I think they were all men, I don't remember any women, too many men were sent to death row. At least one or two were executed, and many others just sent to prison for life. And all of it, not every case, but Mark Furman points out very clearly in his book which cases she falsified forensic DNA evidence in, or forensic evidence in. And so Elaine Taylor is quoted in Mark Furman's book a couple of different times, but Elaine Taylor worked under her. Joyce Gilchrist was her supervisor, her lab manager, when she was, new in the lab. And I don't know. I mean, there was a lot. There's so much. It had to be another. I should find the. I always say I'm going to do this, and I never do because I forget. But there's several, like I said, several videos about Joyce Gilchrist and Bob Macy, and then of course the book. By Mark Furman, Death and Justice, and the Death and Justice, gives so much information about how corrupt Oklahoma City was way back then, at least, and I believe still is, based on the shit that we see coming from their courtrooms these days. So. In fact, there was just a case, besides Richard Glossop, who's still on death row waiting for something to be decided, but there's also another Supreme Court case that Kurt on civil law read through several weeks ago, maybe not quite a month ago, but it just came down from the Supreme Court. And I don't know how to explain this. Cherie might be better at explaining it, possibly, but I'll give it a shot. A murder for hire case, was sent to the Supreme Court to be overturned, or I can't remember now exactly what it was. If you know who Kurt is on civil law, or familiar with him, go back to his channel, because he reads through this, and his disdain for Oklahoma's system is very obvious and palpable. He's really annoyed by it, but basically, the Supreme Court, I don't remember the details of what the actual part of the case was sent.
It was about, the main part anyway that I heard about was that they appealed it on the basis that the convicted person did not get a fair trial because there was so much, they tried to ruin her character, and put in all this alleged bad things in the trial, say a lot of bad things about her, and it basically prejudiced her, and because of that, she didn't get a fair trial. I mean, there was probably other problems too, but that was the main thing I got. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, yes, I agree. That's what it was. That was the crux of it. But I also think it had something to do with cruelty or something by the guards in her prison cell or unit or whatever, repeating these things that were heard at the trial. So in the trial, they talked about she was having an affair, and these things I think were all proven accurately. Having an affair, hired somebody to murder her husband. I believe that happened. But the ADA, Bob Macy was still the DA at the time, but he had one of his ADAs. Is it Fern Smith, Cherie?
Yeah.
Fern Smith was one of the ADAs, and she tried this particular case that we're referencing here that went to the Supreme Court. And she was talking about the affair. Fine. You got to talk about, love interests and money and all the different things that go along with a spouse murdering the other spouse. And so she's talking about the affair, but she goes into all of these details, I think. And I think that when Kurt reads this in his stream that he did about it, it details all of these lurid, illicit things. And one thing I can remember, for whatever reason sticks out in my mind, the AD or the DA paraded, I shouldn't say paraded, but for some reason that's how I'm visioning it, had a pair of thong panties that belonged to this defendant, this wife, and was talking to the jury, telling the jury about how this woman wears these thong underwears when she's, having sex with her lover. And it goes into a lot of information like that is completely irrelevant, because nobody needs to know what she was wearing when she was, cheating on her husband or whatever, and just other things like that. And so that went on through the trial. And even though it was objected to, I guess, I don't know who her defense attorney was. I'll have to go back and check that out. But anyway, it was overruled, as often is in courts in Oklahoma City. The judges are glaringly biased towards the state. Now, I think a lot of us realize, recognize, assume, believe, think that judges are always going to side with the state, with the prosecutors. They're not supposed to, but they're both getting paid by the same taxpayers, so to speak. And so some of them, though, are more blatant than others. And I think in Oklahoma or Oklahoma City, these judges, a lot of those judges are definitely one-sided. They're not unbiased sitting on that bench. Daniel's judge was not unbiased. Anyway, so talking about her underwear that she wore, and what kinds of things they did when they were having sex together or whatever, all of those things caused her to not have a fair trial. And there's a whole lot more, but those are the types of things that were being presented to the jury, having nothing to do with the murder for hire. So at any rate, I don't know. I someday should probably do some research on it, some statistics on it, but I feel like Oklahoma is right up near the top, at least in the top 5, if not, I don't know, top 5 for cases that go to the Supreme Court, because they are criminally corrupt system there. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, which I usually tend to do.
The
ahead.
Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals is the court that the Supreme Court justices bench slapped, as that Kurt called it.
That Kurt call, yeah.
And that Oklahoma Court of Appeals is the same one that let Daniel's case continue to be affirmed, even though there were secret hearings and
Yeah.
there was a lot of bias in his trial as well. A lot of outside influences, like the crowds outside and
Right.
all sorts of messed up things. So they needed to be bench slapped. Thank
Yeah.
you, Kurt. Or thank
Yeah.
you, U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah. Kurt did say, those of you who know Kurt, I mean, he has his moods or his days or his times or whatever, but I really like him. I really do. And because he's just so, I don't give a fuck honest. He just doesn't care. And I don't know. I think that's, more people should be that way. But Kurt is that way, and he can come off really rough. But you're going to hear educated information from Kurt. Number one, very, very, very smart about with the law, but also just honest about what he's reading, and even if it's something that he's reading something to you or teaching you something that goes against what you want it to be, and perhaps even against what he wants it to be, he's just going to be honest about it and tell the truth. Tell it how it really is, because why not? So yeah, I like Kurt too. He's really he's I mean, unless it's something very serious, but even then, if it's very serious, Kurt's going to make something funny about something. And we need that in our lives, some of us. So anyway, I don't even know what question I started to answer about the evidence in this case. Basically, there was no evidence whatsoever in Rosetta Grate's bedroom, where especially where she said it definitely was going to be. Nothing existed. And Giger's attempts to try to say, well, somebody had been in the room, between the time that she was in jail and the time that, the stuff was tested. According to Will Carter, nobody was in the room except for Grate's daughter. Did you tell me her name was Destiny, Cherie? I think Destiny was her name. Who had gone in while Rosetta was in jail and got some of her clothes, I guess, her belongings. And that was it. Yet and Giger tried to, twist and turn about how, somebody could have gone in there and cleaned or wiped or moved the chair. The comforter the comforter's been washed twice, according to Rosetta, who was never back. And just all these different things that it just pisses me off, because all of this evidence that he wasn't there is outweighed by her lies and by the state's blatant dishonesty. And he's just it's disheartening how much this goes on, how much wrongful convictions, how not prominent, but how many there are. There's over thousands of wrongful convictions in prisons right now. That, some of these people may never see justice. Some of them finally did see justice after 40 or 50 years. Some of the men that whose Joyce Gilchrist false forensic evidence sent to prison, they got out, were able to spend a couple of years with their family, and died. I'm trying to think of, there were two, I believe, that died, and I feel like White was the last name of one of them, and his story was just so sad, and They spend all this time wrongfully convicted in prisons for things that they didn't do, but they can't get any kind of fair justice anywhere. And, they either die in prison, get executed, wrongfully executed, or get out of prison after, way too many years and then die, and it's just, I know I sound like doom and gloom. I'm just being real, guys. It's just the way it happens. I watch those cases happen where these people finally get out after all those years, and then something horrible happens to them. What about Sheree? I don't know if you're here still or if you remember. There was the case. Gosh, the name Riley is the only name that's coming to my mind. But
is that KZ's one of KZ's case? You mean?
Yes.
Riley was the name of the little girl. I can't remember what her father's name was.
Yeah, I can't remember either, and that's so sad because I was just reading about it again
Kevin.
The other day. What is it?
His first name is Kevin, I think.
Kevin. Yeah, the little girl's name was Riley. This was one of Kathleen Zellner's cases, wrongful conviction cases that she got overturned. But the little girl was Riley. The dad was accused of killing her, murdering her, and dumping her body off of a bridge by a body of water or something. Anyway, he was convicted. I think he had 2 trials, but he was eventually convicted and went to prison.
Actually, he was one of the lucky ones, I think, because, they had hounded him into giving a false confession, but he was able to get it thrown, or it seems like he didn't even have a trial. He wasn't convicted. He was able to get it thrown out. I'll look up the details, but Kathleen Zellner helped. I'll look them up right now.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, that was another case, but he was eventually cleared, I think, eventually. It broke up his family, his wife and his son, that, because he had 2 kids, the son was older, they ended up getting divorced. I think they were still they were friends, but, I can't imagine something like that wrecking your life and your family's life through no fault of your own. At any rate, he was killed in a car crash just a few years ago or very recently. And I cried. I don't know this man. I just knew about his case. I knew about the poor little girl that was assaulted and murdered, and that he was accused of it. And that Kathleen Zellner helped him with it. Whatever the details, I don't remember, but I remember that it tore his family apart. Him and his wife ended up getting divorced. He was trying to live his best life, moving on without his child. I believe had finally been cleared, and then for whatever reasons, died, was killed in a car crash. And I don't know. I believe in God, and I hate saying everything happens for a reason, because I don't believe that. But all I can think is that there had to be something, for why he was too good to be on this earth anymore. I don't know. I don't know those answers. I just, but it just made me so sad. And I just remember, maybe that's why I can't remember it, because I was reading the article with tears in my eyes because I was so saddened by it. And so, these fucking judges and prosecutors, they don't give a fuck about you, about me, or about anybody else if it's going to benefit them in some way, shape, or form. It's disgusting. And I'll tell you what about Galen Gigger. He ran for DA because, thank God, David Prater finally retired. He's also just another rusty, dirty spoke in the wheel of injustice in Oklahoma. But he finally retired, so everybody knew that Galen Gigger was going to run for DA. and he lost. Y'all, he lost. It was amazing to see. I followed that election more than I was following my own election at the time in my own state.
Oh, happy day. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a great day.
It was a great day, and we were on I believe we were on Discord talking about it, celebrate. I don't remember exactly, but I know we were extremely happy. He did horrible in his debates. Galen Gigger, he got called out during the debates because this is public knowledge. Not very many people know about it, but we know about it. But he got called out, Galen Gigger did, during his debate, during his campaign, really, because one of his sons was accused by 3 young ladies. These 3 young ladies, independently of one another, accused one of Galen Gigger's sons of sexually assaulting them when they were younger, and when the son was like 15 or 16 years old. And it was reported to Gigger and to police in a couple of different towns, if I'm not mistaken. And mysteriously, and we know this because we've read it through court documents, witness documents actually, that they got the case out of Oklahoma City where it was and got it moved to some obscure little town somewhere northeast or something in Oklahoma. And basically the judges and the DAs helped Gigger hide these charges. Eventually the charges were dropped without prejudice, thank goodness. But they were dropped before the election. But nonetheless, he got called out during his campaign because he is trying people in court of committing all these heinous sexual assaults, i.e. Daniel Holtzclaw, and then failing to take care of what appears to be allegedly his own problem in his own family regarding sexual assault. And I have a video about that as well, way back in my history of videos. So anytime something comes out of Oklahoma City, good, bad, or otherwise, I'm doing a video about it because it needs to be made aware how criminally corrupt that many places of that state are. So anyway, Oklahoma has a serious problem. Bob Macy was one of the top 5 judges and DAs in the country, way back when he was still a DA. I think the title was top 5 deadliest DAs in the country or something like that. And Bob Macy was one of those 5. And I have several videos with Bob Macy, Joyce Gilchrist, Galen Gigger, Kim Davis, Rocky Gregg. they're all getting called out by me, by us on our channel. So if you're curious about anything or any of these individual characters, but you can't find a video or something that I might have done or that I've mentioned, please reach out and let me know. Let Cherie or I, or both of us know, and we'll try to help you find it. Because there's something somewhere, I guarantee it. And so, anyway, I'm disgusted by Rosetta Grate. First of all, her testimony was foul and dirty and nasty and disgusting. The things that she says that she did and all that stuff. And the thing is that she tells everybody, I'm just being honest. Well, if I was lying, would I be telling you all this stuff? Yeah, some liars do lie like that. They tell you things that they do wrong so that you believe their lie. I think that's what I think. Anyway, I missed a bunch of comments and I really didn't want to miss any of them. There were several comments in here from Scooby the dog. She has a lot of knowledge about forensics, DNA, dog sure he helped me. Dog handler, the dog sniff. Help me with the words, please.
What? Oh, getting that dog handler in Utah who
Yeah,
uses
but
his
she. What is it called? They cadaver dogs and
scent.
dogs that
I
scent
can't remember.
dogs. Yeah, scent dogs and cadaver dogs and things like that. Scooby the dog has a ton of she has a lot of knowledge about that, but she understands basic DNA and for that kind of stuff, as you could see with for her comments in the chat. So and then also there were several comments by RP Games, who has obviously a good amount of knowledge about DNA, made great comments, which I really appreciate. And let's see, there were so many good ones. Anyway, we had one troll, well, at least one troll that I know of that spoke, that made a comment. I ignore them for the most part. And, we don't really get very many of them, but anyway, he's just basically said in the comment, he's guilty, move on. No, I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. Let's see. Anyway, I'm really sorry. I missed these comments and I really wanted to try to catch them all, but I'll go back through and listen when I listen and read the comments. But I really appreciate all of you for commenting and talking, offering your opinions, advice, knowledge, information. That really helps us to learn more. I mean, we can never hear enough or learn too much about any of this stuff. I don't retain it very well. So the more often I hear it, the better. Under Your Scars popped in. It didn't sound like Under Your Scars was having a very good day. I'm really sorry. I hope things get better. Let's see. I don't know, Cherie, did you see any other, like, offhand that you can think of that?
It seemed like we were mostly talking about biased jurors and problems with the justice system.
Okay, yeah,
Uh,
right.
ex parte hearings.
I have a hard time sticking to the topic. Obviously, there's so many things that we can trail off into. So anyway, like I said, I will read the chat later as I go through the video. Please don't, if you'd like to offer any more information or opinions or, things that or, about any of this case or DNA or forensics or all that, please don't hesitate to leave comments. I check them regularly. I don't catch them all the time right as they come out, but I do check my comment, my notifications regularly. And probably once a week, I go through and try to catch comments that I might have missed. So, go ahead.
RP Games asked a while ago, about a half hour ago, they did the oral wash for Janie Liggins, and what was the result there? Oh, well, I guess he kind of answered it, negative as well.
Yeah.
Because he already knew.
Yeah. Yeah, zero. There was zero evidence, negative. Everything was negative for Janie Liggins as well. Yet he was still convicted on her charges. So go fucking figure. No witnesses, 2:00 in the morning. I don't know, man. It's just, it isn't right. It isn't right. And who knows if we're changing anything or making a difference. I feel like there's more awareness in the last couple of weeks, for sure, to the case. And yes, it is a lot to try to jump into. like for some of you who are just coming in the last few weeks in the chat, either from Rob's channel or elsewhere, and listening to some really heinous, dirty, nasty, crazy shit going, the hell is going on in this channel? It's all about this case. 99.9% about what you see and hear on this channel is about Daniel Holtzclaw's case. And, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep talking about it. I'm just going to keep presenting these trial transcripts that we're reading to you, either live or recorded, but we're showing you the transcript as we're reading it. Nothing is being, it's just the truth of what is really went on in the case. The problem with Daniel's case is, first of all, there were just 13 accusers in one freaking trial. And that's just impossible it's just, I think I said this last week, even YSL trial, they all had their own attorneys in the courtroom with them. Daniel, there was one attorney for Daniel, and he didn't do well at all. So anyway, check out some of my other video. We started Inside the Wrongful Conviction of Daniel Holtzclaw, I want to say almost a year ago. And so those are all named by episode numbers. So even if you just want to go back there and start, to try to catch up where we are, then you can do that too. I'm also putting a playlist together for each accuser as we complete their particular case. So, you can listen and learn that way as well. Otherwise, check out holtzclawtrial.com. Bates Investigates, and Brian Bates is where you're going to get 100% accurate knowledge and information about Daniel's case. He has all the documents. Well, that he's in law school now, but he has, he got all the documents, all the police reports, all of the case documents for each accuser, and presents it in a really, really well put together podcast. So check that out for sure. And that, I would say, is probably, if you don't know about the case, that is the best way to get caught up or to learn about it, is through Brian Bates. So Michelle Malkin has done several videos in support of Daniel. So no, Brian Bates was the investigator for Daniel's defense team. Yeah. Anyway, in the future with Daniel, his case, and I don't know, depends on how familiar some of you are with how slowly these things work. Daniel's case is in post-conviction. They're working on post-conviction relief. I don't know when there's no word that I know of as to where they're at in that. So I did speak with Daniel, I think it was last week. And I think I did a live stream after that, but he just is hoping and praying that people don't give up on him. So I'm not giving up, and I know Cherie's not giving up, and we're just going to keep doing this. And listen, I'm just going to keep rambling my mouth on until good things come and Daniel is home and free. I have to believe it's going to happen. Did you see that? Oh my gosh. Oh, the RP games. So you saw I stopped watching them after their episode with Daniel Holtzclaw because they pissed me off so bad. They were Chase Hughes. Sorry, Chase Hughes. I know you'll never see this, but He made me so angry in the chat, and the people in the chat were ruthless. No, and I was trying to be, I had solicited a whole bunch of people to come and listen to that with me. I don't know if you remember that, Cherie, but everybody else left because it was so hard to listen to, because we knew, or we know the facts and the truth. It was really difficult for people to listen to, and they were like, people were like texting me, I'm sorry, I got to go, I can't listen to this anymore. And I just was like, nope, I'm staying here. I got to just keep on, putting things in this chat that, to try. And I wasn't being rude or disrespectful. I was being, trying to give factual information as much as you can in a YouTube chat, right? And people, and most of the chatters were all just attacking me, and just, and I just was like, wow. And they just didn't have anything positive to say about Daniel. And I'm screaming, and I've been screaming for years. They need to be watching some damn conversations and interviews with Kim fucking Davis, because I'm telling you what, I am dying to know what they think of Kim Davis in her interview with Michelle Malkin. It was September 16th, I think, of 2019. Cherie might have linked that. I don't know for sure. I'm not paying a whole lot of attention. But she did Rocky Gregory and Kim Davis did like a 2-hour long interview with Michelle Malkin. And it's just astounding. The lies and I don't know what the words are, the lack of knowledge or playing dumb or whatever they were doing with Michelle Malkin. Because by that point, by the time Michelle Malkin did that interview, she knew her shit about the case, and she knew all the information and the details about the case. And, so that's who the freaking behavior panel needs to be looking at, as Rocky Gregory and Kim Davis, because I want to know what they think about them. We know now what they think about Daniel. I want to know what they think about those two. So if anybody, RP Games, if you have any, I don't know, connect. I've emailed all of them. I've emailed them. I've tweeted them. I've tried to reach out to them in comment sections in their videos. They've never responded to me, and they just have ignored it. So I finally thought, I was starting to get salty with my engagement with them, and I thought, okay, now I'm starting to borderline on disrespectful, and I didn't want to do that. So maybe other people besides me reaching out and suggesting some other things would be helpful, because I mean, I don't necessarily believe everything about body language and body behavior and all that stuff. But I'll be the first one to tell you that when I'm listening to somebody tell a story or watching them, I do that. I actually think about, I don't know, did you see the way he, tilted his head or moved his, or, covered his eyes, or I do that all the time. So I think that's kind of in our nature for a lot of people, especially, some of us who are like too deep into true crime. I think that we kind of do that. We, we kind of just, whether we're doing it subconsciously or not, I think we kind of do that. We think we know when somebody's lying, or I do. I like I just said in this video, watching Rosetta Grate and the way she spoke and the things that she said and the ways that she moved and the words that she used, I could tell she was lying. I also have documentation, court docs to back up what that I know that, but it's all whatever. So, The game's probably started for some of you. Well, I guess it would be, I guess whenever the game starts, it's when it starts for everybody, right? But I don't know what time that's going to be. But I don't want to hold you up any longer. I want to let you guys get to that game. I want to catch some of these comments really quick. Let's see. RP games, because I think you also had some knowledge about Daniel's case before you started watching my channel, if I'm not mistaken. I think you had some knowledge as well. He says their review was only the interrogation of Daniel, and I think that plus the fact that he was convicted swayed them. If I can get a few minutes of their time, I'll lobby them to revisit. That would be awesome. I really appreciate that. Lobby away, brother. Because listen, people watch your channel. I can sit here and be pissed off at them and not like them all I want. I'm nobody, but people watch that channel and they watch their stuff, and I think that would be fair to to analyze both sides, in my opinion. So, Greg taught Sear when I went through it, and Chase and I have communicated about head injuries for the last year, so I might be able to broach a subject. That's awesome. I appreciate that. I'm sorry that those are some of the head injuries was a conversation, but if you've got his ear, anybody's ear, I'm willing to. Yeah, I'm not too proud to beg. So anyway, so Cherie, any final information or things I forgot or?
No, I think you covered it well, and we talked about a lot of important issues, so it was a good one.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to finish up the Rosetta Grate accusations by going through reading the trial testimony from Detective Kim Davis for Rosetta Grate. She is one salty, snarky, snappy. There's a couple of words that I won't say on my channel, and this is one of them, but it starts with a B. B and C, those are two words that I will never say publicly on my channel. But anyway, she's horrible, and anyway, we're going to get that recorded, and I'm going to try to get it edited. And well, I did okay with this one. I had it ready to go. I just didn't schedule the stream until a little later. But anyway, TBI is traumatic brain injury, if I'm not mistaken, under your scars. Yeah. So we're going to, there's probably going to be a lot of editing that's going to need to be done, because I guarantee you I'm going to be having a lot of outbursts. I'm cutting out most of my outbursts most of the time when you guys hear these recordings, because, you don't need to hear all of them. But my problem with trying to pronounce, I can't even say it now. Homozygote? Is that how you say it? Oh my gosh, you guys, I must have cut out 3 minutes of me trying to figure out, and I know the word, and I knew phosphatase, whatever, but when I saw them, I was like, holy shit, I haven't seen that word in a minute. I can't remember how to say them. So, but when I said, Galen Giger asked ELAINE Taylor, did you say homozygote? And there's a whole thing in there. Well, I think I left most of it in there, but I thought, you know what? I screwed up. I'm gonna leave this one in there and let them laugh at me, and because it's fair. We chuckled at Cherie a few weeks ago when she thought she was on Sesame Street. So, all's fair in love and war. So anyway, we'll read Kim Davis. Listen, I just want to. I know I say it every week, but I really, really hope you guys will tune in to listen to Kim Davis's trial testimony. She is a real piece of work. So thank you all for being here. Mama Pillow, the RP games, Under Your Scars, Joffrey, Little Barb, Lewis was here. Jerome from Belgium was in here for a little bit. I can't remember who I've missed, but to all of you who were here, who have stayed. Oh, Nan's Life was here cooking dinner for us while she was listening. So thank you for listening, and we appreciate you guys, everybody. We've got 691 subscribers. I'm pretty sure we can hit 700 before the end of but before we live stream next weekend. So, if you haven't before, please share the channel, share the videos, talk about Daniel's case. Even if you don't know very much about it, send them our way. We'll talk about it. Let's, if I can if I can hit 700, I'll be feeling pretty good, because it's taken me a long time just to get to where I am right now. So share, like, subscribe, and help us make Daniel's case more public than it is at all, because it isn't not very many people know about it unless they live in Oklahoma City or were there at the time or all those things. So just do what you can to share our content, and hopefully you'll be a part of it when we see Daniel freed. So I know that day's coming, but I'm 63 years old almost, so we need to hurry it up, because I want to see that. I want to be there when that happens. So until next week, everybody enjoy the game, enjoy your parties, be safe, don't drink and drive. Go Chiefs, I guess. Again, they're my team, but somebody else needs to win the Super Bowl for a change. And until next weekend, peace out.